We also had the rather odd announcement from UCAD and the WBC's clean boxing program, as well as VADA, about a suspension of drug testing, Eddie. Now, something that we always
Yeah.
like to talk about when we get together. That is, to me at least, from the outside looking in, not the wisest announcement to make. Just your thoughts on that.
Twofold. One, completely agree with you. Two, probably testing policy and protocol have to let the governing bodies, probably and fighters as well, know that they won't be testing during this period. Sounds ridiculous because obviously to Joe Bloggs, they would say, well, you're letting fighters know, you're not testing them. But I'm pretty sure they would have to let the governing bodies know, and in turn that would actually get out. So they probably felt better to make a statement. It's the right decision. I mean, you just don't have the volume of people, doctors, laboratories right now to test that sample of athletes. So, but by the way, any additional VADA testing is still running. And we have fights in place that are still being VADA tested. That's when we pay the additional fee on top of like a global system like the WBC or like UCAD with the British Boxing Board of Control. So some are still running, but the random stuff for those particular governing bodies aren't. So I understand what you're saying, but I do think they probably have to alert people and let them know they won't be testing, because they might be liable themselves. If they haven't done a certain amount of tests within a time, or I don't know how their contracts work, but they couldn't fulfil their duties.
Is there anything that you could do for your roster of fighters to enable or ensure that they are being tested in some way, shape, or form during this lockdown?
Not really. I mean, it involves, again, all our bigger fights that are signed. You've got Povetkin and Dillian Whyte and Usyk and Chisora. That continues. But it's impossible with over 100 fighters to create a testing system. And it's not even that, Rob. I don't think they're available. I don't think you could go to VADA now and say, can you test 100 fighters for me randomly over the next 3 months? And I'm not trying to swerve it, but it's also not our job. That's the job of the governing bodies to make sure that testing's in progress. We already spend, I don't know, £400,000 or £500,000 a year in providing additional testing for our fighters and our fights. But in this situation, it's a unique situation where, in an ideal world, it would be continued and there would be testing right now. But there are bigger things to worry about in labs and with doctors and scientists.
Just final question, Eddie. We've seen in the last week or two, I don't know how long it's been going for, but Anthony Crolla, Richard Poxon, and Larry Olubamiwo have started like a little, I think it's like a house party show that they're talking about.
Right.
They've spoken specifically about performance-enhancing drugs. Now, Larry, of course, when he was an active fighter, he was busted, quote unquote, for performance-enhancing drugs. He's since then sort of turned to the other side and started to talk about his experiences and what he felt was going on when he boxed and what's going on now. He said that he believes 80 to 90% of pay-per-view fighters are currently or have been exposed to performance-enhancing drugs. Two questions: do you agree with that? And secondly, if you do agree with that, what can we do to change it?
Well, I think that's absolute rubbish. And that's being said by a guy that's been busted for PEDs and probably is trying to make it sound like, well, everyone's doing it anyway. It is completely impossible for the testing processes we have in place for pay-per-view events. And I'm not saying there's not a problem in boxing, but to single out pay-per-view events where they are actually the ones that do get the additional testing. Dillian Whyte, Povetkin, Derek Chisora and Usyk. These have got anywhere from 8 to 14-week testing programs with VADA, where they're testing 2-3 times a week. You've seen, look even in the last, we lost shows. Jarrell Miller against Anthony Joshua. Tyrone Spong against Usyk 5 days out from the fight. So we're the ones that are paying for that testing and actually busting fighters that are is causing us financial problems and logistical problems on the show, because we're getting the results where we got to pull out, we got to find the new fighter, we've got to go off sale, we've got to cancel the event, but we're still choosing to go through that process. You know, some would say, well, actually, we shouldn't even bother. We should let the governing bodies do it and say, it's up to you guys. You know, we're running the event. If you're cleared to fight, you're cleared to fight. But we're actually paying for and implementing the testing program, whether it's White against Povetkin, Taylor against Serrano, another, you know, obviously Joshua against Pula. Joshua is the most tested athlete, boxer, by a mile. He's getting 4 or 5 tests a week combined with UCAD and VADA. The amount of blood they take off him is ridiculous. So for Larry to say that is idiotic, to be honest with you, because it's just not the case. And I don't think pay-per-view fighters, when you talk about, if you talk about Matchroom pay-per-view fighters,
I think, sorry to interrupt, Eddie. I think like the suggestion was that level of fighter. Certainly wasn't anything specific to Matchroom or Queen. Elite level fighters. Elite level.
Okay, well, I can just tell you that on Matchroom pay-per-view events, all of those events are covered by VADA, right? An external payment system that is a complete and utter thorough testing process. And so in that respect, to say that 80 or 90%, and I know he didn't say Matchroom pay-per-view events, but I'm talking about of that level as far as I'm concerned, are less likely to cheat. America, on non-Matchroom shows, because again, you know, we just come off our last show, was an example, Vargas against Mikey Garcia, both additional VADA testing for that fight that was run by us, paid for. So on non-Matchroom shows, I still don't think 80 or 90% is a ridiculous statement. It's a ridiculous number. But there are definitely fighters cheating. Definitely. And there's no, unless other organisations, top ranked PBC, and I'm not saying they don't test all their fighters, but they definitely don't have as rigorous testing in place as Matchroom. And there are definitely fighters cheating. And I'm sure there's been a fighter or fighters that have cheated on a Matchroom show. You can't keep everybody in the net, you know, but there are definitely more fighters outside of Matchroom events that are cheating. But 80 or 90%, that's basically saying 80, 90% of elite fighters are cheating on drugs. Absolutely ridiculous. Total rubbish.
Okay. All right, Eddie. Well, I do appreciate your time, mate. Before I let you go, actually, 2 things before I let you go. Who have you got on your live tomorrow? Because I'm going to need to rip that content.
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. That's really good. How does that work? Just basically, if it's a live, anyone can rip it?
No, so if it's, well, the way that I do it at least is if it's Matchroom, I will speak to Matchroom. If it's your own personal live, then, you know, unless you tell me off, I'm going to rip it down. But as I understand it, Scott,
we're actually, yeah, we've put our social media guys got the hump. They got really pissy about it. So
Scott's got my phone number. He just needs to let me know what time it's cool to go out.
So we're doing a new thing now. We're saying let us run it first, and you guys can have it after.
Absolutely no problem. But who have you got anyway?
Tomorrow I've got Callum Smith, Josh Kelly, Lewis Ritson, Terry Harper, Cash Farouk. I think one other as well. Yeah, so just trying to obviously keep everyone relevant. And I think that's the thing now, Rob, is we're on such a great run. We've got to keep boxing relevant. Got to keep it in people's minds. And stuff like this interview, stuff like the lives tomorrow, you know, the stuff you were saying about Crawler and Pox and anything like that, any content where fans can engage, keep interested in the sport is good news, because when we come back, it's not going to be easy. So we've got to make sure that we're ready to go.
Okay, and when we do come back, Eddie, what 3 fights would you make if you could make any 3 fights?
Joshua Fury, Brooke Khan, and Fowler Fitzgerald.
Not Canelo Saunders?
Yeah, that's made, pretty much.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Akhmadaliev versus Navarrete.
Yeah, good fight.
Okay, all right, Eddie.
Or Julio or Chocolatito against Estrada.
Yeah, rematch be good. Rematch be good.
Or Julio Cesar Martinez against Estrada.
Be up for that as well.
Yeah. Devin Haney against Ryan Garcia.
What's going to go?
That's,
What's going on with the WBC lightweight situation? Because Haney's going to be healed up by the time this happens, right?
yeah. So Haney's saying, and he's written to the WBC to say, I'm ready. So I'm not in recess. I'm ready. But obviously the WBC have already ordered Campbell Fortuna. So I'll leave it up to them. But for me, it's very difficult for them to turn around and say, sorry guys, we know we ordered that, but this has just thrown up so many additional problems to already a crazy world. But Devin is preaching right now, and listen, he's got a right to do it. That I'm ready. I'm not in recess. He's going to be in some big fights this year, and I really want to make Devin Haney against Ryan Garcia.
I'd like to see it too. That £135 WBC lightweight title situation over the last 18 months has been an absolute nightmare. But thanks very much.
The division's so good. The division's so good. It's probably the best division right now.
I think so too, yeah. All right, Ed. Well, thanks very much for your time, mate. Do appreciate it, and hope to catch up with you soon. But yeah, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social.
Take care.
Cheers, Ed.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.